Hi, my name is Peters. I'm originally from the Netherlands, but I've been living in the UK for about 8 years now. So in this video, I'm actually going to talk about 6 different ways how life is different in the Netherlands versus the UK. Let's talk about the first thing, tea versus coffee. In the Dutch, you have the saying, een bakje troost. Well, that relates to talking to someone over a cup of coffee. And also when it comes to work, it's very normal to find people around a coffee machine in order to talk things through. However, in the UK where I work, people would never say we go for coffee, but we go for tea, even though they might drink coffee sometimes. So there's much more of a tea culture versus the Netherlands. The second thing is highland in the UK versus lowland in the Netherlands. As you know, the Netherlands, we had to create our own land from the sea, so there's a lot of land that's actually below sea level. That's what they refer to as the polders. Actually, the highest point in the Netherlands is only about 300 meters, so you can't really classify it as more as like a tiny hill. Whereas in the UK, you have proper mountains, the highest point being Ben Nevis in Scotland, so around 1300 meters, even though they would express that in feet. And then you have Scafell Pike in England and Snowdonia in Wales. So plenty of more exploring in terms of mountains, so the land is very different. And that also directly links into our mode of transport, which I will explain about later. So that leads into the third point, cars in the UK versus how bicycles rule the land in the Netherlands. As I just mentioned, everything in the Netherlands, we have relatively low land, so it's very easy to just cycle anywhere. Plus, there's very dedicated cycle lanes, so it's considered to be very safe, and most people actually wouldn't wear a helmet when they're cycling. And in the UK, I probably wouldn't go anywhere without my helmet on, because there's usually no dedicated cycle lanes, and people are not so used to having cyclists around, so I don't consider it to be exactly safe. Then the fourth point, and I've done a whole video on this, is the Dutch directness versus UK politeness. Well, it kind of really depends on you, what you prefer. So there's a nice, I guess, middle ground somewhere. So in the Netherlands, people are more free to speak their mind, so you get honest feedback, which can be considered a bit rude at times in the UK. So even though you might speak the same language, it's all about deciphering the hidden meaning behind the language. When you talk to English people and you really want to know their opinion, it took me quite a while to figure out what they actually mean. And if you want to know more about this, then do have a look at this video. And then the fifth point is the massive big pint, more than half a litre, versus a very small pintje, which is only 0.25 litres. So there's a big difference in terms of quantity, so it's almost, well, it is more than twice as big what you would get in the UK, so it's actually quite heavy in your hand. The beer is also very different. I do have to say I lived in Belgium for quite a while as well, and I much rather prefer the Belgian beer. So there's many differences in beer, but also in general. Here I mentioned, for instance, you have a pint versus litre. You could have looked at, if I talked about the highest point of the mountain, you have meters versus feet. So there's a lot of differences in terms of how people express themselves in measures. And I still have to, especially when I'm running, I always have to convert how fast I run in miles, in kilometers and back. And the sixth and the final point is dressed up versus casual. In the Netherlands, it's very common to wear nice jeans and a top when you go to a party. Whereas in the UK, people go all out. And this is probably especially the case where I live in Newcastle upon Tyne. And you can see this every Friday night when going out, especially when people start to take their shoes off, you know they've had enough to drink. So quite a few big differences how life is different, and probably the best is always, as I said, somewhere in the middle. But hopefully you've enjoyed this video about some of the differences between life in the Netherlands and in the UK. And if you want to know more what it's like living as a Dutch expat in the UK, then do have a look at this playlist. Thanks for watching.